Greetings, dear ones. I am Merlia. I have waited a very long time to come in to help to balance some of the energy on planet Earth. Please understand, dear ones, I am representing the feminine aspect of the magic that all of you know, that has transversed from time frame to time frame to be here at a very specific time where you can make a difference. Well, all of you are in motion. So please understand there is no one on planet Earth that is just taking up space. All of you have very specific purpose, intents, and motions of movement that you're moving toward. So we welcome this. Today, I wish to offer you several aspects. And over the next several months, we'll be bringing in tools specifically aimed at balancing the feminine aspect, the power aspect. Now, we have many illustrations that we can use to talk about that, and we will be very brief with them today because we have so much more to cover. But the way to think about this is very simply that you have force versus masculine, and power is not always feminine. But it's a good way to think of it during this transition and this aspect. How can you bring your aspects and your power to the table without forcing it? That is the feminine aspect. It has always been perceived, since you have been mostly in survival mode, it has been perceived as survival. It has been perceived as survival of the fittest, so the strongest always seem to win. That's what tended to put male over feminine in many aspects with getting things accomplished. Now, is it true? No, of course it's not true. And furthermore, without the feminine base that the male energy builds on, it would not be possible for either to have power or force. So you're moving more into the feminine aspects of every part of yourselves. Each of you must find that peace within you that you can rethink, and instead of reacting the way that you typically do, to stop for a moment, breathe, and feel the connections. So this day, we'll give you a little bit of a tool to work with. We can see this from home all the time. Now, imagine just for a moment that you are playing a game. If you've ever played a game that goes way back in the ancient Chinese called Mahjong. Mahjong is all these wonderful little characters on tiles, and they put them everywhere. And your job is to find the matching tiles, to find those pieces that match. And when you find them, you remove them from the board, and the game is to remove all of them from the board. It's a fun little game, but it actually represents much more than you understand. And with the feminine aspect coming in, this is a huge piece that everybody can start working with immediately. Now, when you match things, you match energy in the same way that you match those tiles. You're constantly looking at energy forms, whether you're in the midst of a supermarket with hundreds of people around, whether you're in a concert with thousands of people around, or whether you're in your bedroom all by yourself. All of them are basically very similar. You're constantly matching energy. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say that you have an animal living with you. You have a cat that transverses through your house and pretty much rules everything themselves. Well, you're constantly matching that energy, whether you know it or not. Every time you look at the cat, you're checking to see if the cat's okay. You're checking to see if the cat matches the energy that you are familiar with. Now, in the cat, it is an entity that is in your home all the time. So you have lots of opportunities to work with it, to play with it, and to fine-tune some of the techniques that you can use for this. But when it comes to strangers, when it comes to being out in the open, or even seeing new things on your television or on your computer screen, or even on your phone, now you start to match energies in exactly the same way. But it doesn't always seem to have the same result. So let us give you some opportunities to look at this, so you can catch yourself in the motion of doing this and possibly even widen your own perception a little bit before you react. And that is the biggest challenge, dear ones. You're playing this beautiful game. It's a game of hide and seek. God hiding from himself, looking for herself. trying to find yourself in the mirror. Well, here we go. Let us give you an opportunity. What happens when two energy forms see each other? The very first thing happens is exactly the same thing that happens when you look in the mirror. The very first thing that happens when you look at any energy form is you look for imperfections. That's exactly what takes place on planet Earth. Every time you look in the mirror, you're always looking at your imperfections, trying to correct them, not even having a clue that it is generally your imperfections that create the beauty that you carry around with you. But nonetheless, you're always trying to perfect yourself, evolve yourself, return yourself while you're in physical form to the energy of home. Absolutely perfect. So what we're going to suggest to you is this. What happens when you walk into a brand new room? You look around the room. Sometimes you're walking through the room. You have a purpose and intent to go through. But let's say you just walked into a brand new room that you've never seen before. First thing that you do is look around. You basically match patterns. Now, this is true with everything, not only rooms that you walk into, but people, especially people. And whether they're on your television or in your room with you, you match this energy pattern over and over again. You get in the habit of matching things in a certain way. So what we're going to tell you is a little bit different, because it takes that catch in the very beginning. It takes you to be aware when you're doing it. So the first thing we ask you to do when you see new energy is take a breath. Just take a breath and release. And when you take a breath and release and focus on this new energy, whether it be a person, whether it be a situation, whether it be an emotional attribute, whatever it is, and take a look at that, and instead of immediately looking for the imperfections, look at the ways that you are alike. Now, that is very simple, simplistic sounding. But when you develop the habit of matching patterns, what happens is the first thing you do is you have so many patterns in front of you, you figure out ways to eliminate many of them very quickly. This doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, this doesn't match over here, this doesn't go, and you pretty much clear the table. Well, the other thing that you do sometimes is you bring energies in that don't match, but you have a belief system. Whatever the belief system is, that you have to be in this relationship with this energy, whatever it is. We'll call it a person. Now, when the energies don't match, the first thing you do is find the imperfections, like always. But you also find some of the perfections. You find many of the ways that you match. So what happens is you jump into this and you start to work on those imperfections, trying to change them. But do you remember what we just said about your imperfections? They are at the base of your true beauty. So changing them doesn't always work. And in fact, this is actually at the base of many failed relationships, where they get into a relationship together and try to change each other. Well, people always change and they always evolve, but that has to be done internally, not externally by another person. So what we're going to ask you to do is develop the habit of looking at everything. Now, let's say you walk into your house, you see a piece of trash on the floor. First thing you do is, oh, that's out of place. That must go. That must. Before you pick it up and throw it in the trash can, honor it. Find out what it has in common with you. Find out maybe that represented your favorite candy bar that you had the night before. Whatever it is, find that likeness. You understand, dear ones, that all of humanity at this moment is in a movement of separation. You can change that. And it is the feminine energy that will change it first. That's why I'm here. I have been with the group all along, what the keeper calls the group. We laugh hysterically when he says that. He loves to try to give us names and titles of which we have resisted for so long, because humans tend to give power to names and titles that it doesn't belong to. We really have no power other than what we can bring out in you, which is why we're here. You're going to see a massive movement, dear ones, toward the feminine aspects in many areas of life. We cannot wait to see how this affects. And of course, there are the things that have caused that to happen. Just watch how this plays out. Stand firmly in your own pride and balance that masculine and feminine energy at every opportunity. And every point that you see energy, take a breath and look for the ways that that energy is similar to you before you interact with it. That will change your world very quickly. Now, we have said very clearly that on planet Earth right now, everyone is in a recessional wave. You basically are moving so fast that there is a major amount of fear on the planet. And that fear can be harnessed, and quite often is used for a singular purpose or more. And you find yourself in these situations where things are taking place and they seem to be out of control. Don't believe it for a second. You're in much more control than you understand. And 5 years, 10 years from now, when you look back at this time, you're going to see why this had to happen and why these things are taking place. And not just in one country, they're everywhere. You're in a recessional wave. You've been moving forward, and now you seem to be moving backwards and you're resisting it. No problem, because you're going to change it very quickly. That recessional wave will happen so fast, it will allow you to catapult forward at a faster pace than you thought possible before. Just hold your true power. Hold your energy of who you are in balance. Don't try to be forceful. Don't try to be timid and kind. Just allow it to come out naturally. And you'll find that by matching those patterns and looking for the patterns that are like you, rather than naturally finding the imperfections, you'll start a whole different way of life. And that will change this world very quickly. It is with the greatest of honor that I get to reach you in these ways. I have been in the background for a very long time, very much enjoying the new balance of planet Earth because you have called me in. You are the ones that are ready for the next step of balance in humanity. I am Merlia. Come up and see me sometime. Aspavo. Welcome everybody, greetings. I'm Ilra of Rhythmic Service at your service. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the different processes of having fun. Because that's my forte, you know. I've always got to be having fun. Because if you're not having fun, it doesn't work. It's real simple. You got to put one foot in front of the other, but you also got to be laughing once in a while. Have a good time with it. Now, you've got to meet this beautiful lady by the name of Merlia. All the stories I can tell you about her. We'll come back to that another time. But she's shaken up your world more than a few times, I'll tell you. She's come into planet Earth before, and that has not happened very often. Only for a really short time, not an incarnation, but she's dipped her fingers in here more than once to kind of balance the energies. And that's what she does so well. That's why she's back here today. Come because you basically made a space for her. No, not on the broadcast, but you made a space for her in your hearts. And all of you just opened up. You wanted to something new. And furthermore, you got a little scared of some of this masculine energy that seems to be taking over your planet in a big wave. Well, it's not really, but it seems to be that way. All it's really doing is calling out the feminine. And that is worth the energies for. Because now what's happening is you're starting to see a whole new aspect of energies. Now I want to tell you something kind of interesting. Because here's really what takes place. And the timekeeper can tell you a little bit more about the time aspects of this. But it's really fascinating. So here you are, growing and making all these societies. And all these societal rules and connections and ways of living and expressing your light. And then pretty soon what happens is your planet starts to die. And as your planet starts to die, there's all this energy and all this connection. But you know what happened? The planet died. We're talking about Mars. You were there. Almost all of you were there at some point. And you'll find that out from your own sciences, because they're going to discover life on Mars, but it'll be yours. They'll have a hard time even equating it in a while. So what takes place? Well, what took place was really beautiful. Because at the very end of this planet, everyone knew what was taking place. They stepped into another dimension of time and space. Because you see what was taking place is just as this was evolving and growing in this way, humans started to become, you weren't called humans there, but that's okay. You weren't called Martians either. They don't call it Mars. But basically, you stepped into it and had to balance the energy in a whole different way in order to step through that dimensional reality. And the most beautiful things happened because you basically took a place on another planet. And then, at the same time, you planted the seeds of life on another stray planet very close to Mars. Well, that's where you are today. You're on planet Earth. Of course, you didn't call it Earth back in those days either. But that's what happened. And in order to make those dimensional changes, something has to happen. A balance has to take place. Well, does that mean that your Earth is ending? Does that mean that we're telling you that your planet is on its last leg? No, we're not. We're not telling you that at all. But what we are telling you is just like those days. You're starting to become aware that you don't exist in one dimension. You're multidimensional in a lot of different ways. So you've got to find out not only what dimension you're living in, but how do you use the others? How do you experience it? Because you see, your spirit isn't limited to one experience on Earth. You're having at least 12 of them at the same time. Now that's interesting because the one piece that you don't generally do there, when you come in and you have all these 12 experiences, you go off this way and you become a farmer and you love to farm and raise your wheat that you're raising and all the things that you're doing. You have a family. Very beautiful. Over here, you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Over here, when you go over this direction, over here, you're doing something entirely different. You're a baseball coach. And over here, you're working for another company. And over here, you're doing all these different things. But there's one piece that generally, not always, but generally is the same all the way around. And that is your expression of sexual energy. Your choice of a masculine or feminine expression. Now, when you go home, what happens? Well, you're not really masculine or feminine. You just took that body and you had to bring that aspect of it out and play the best that you could with that. But masculine and feminine are contained within everything. So that's the balance that has to happen for you to change dimensions. Now, why would you want to change dimensions? Well, you might want to go visit the farmer over there. He's got some answers for you. And so does this guy, and so does this person and this person. But generally, you're the same sex in all other dimensions. So in order to move from one dimensional reality to the other, it's going to be really important for you to start to balance that and to play it out in a different way. That is the magic of what Merlia is bringing to everybody now. And it's not just Merlia, it's a whole raise of feminine aspect. In fact, if you weren't raised in the feminine energy already, Merlia could not have come in. And she doesn't have all the answers, but she's got a piece of it, and she's got the new energy that you can now gain confidence in. And that's one of the biggest challenges with the feminine, is to be able to hold the confidence, because it doesn't express power in the same way. Well, in your world, you try to have effect on things, so you put something up and you pray, oh, here, see, there's my power. I can make that work. I can do that, no problem. But what if you were just to talk to it and make it work in a different way? What if you found out you got muscles in your own finger? You can do it. You don't need to push. You don't need the force. That's what all of humanity is wrestling with right now. And you can call it force versus power. You can call it masculine versus feminine. You can call it all of those things, but they're not really versus. They're not really against each other. They're just out of balance. So you don't call one good and you don't call one bad, because that's not going to work. They're both good. But what happens is when they become so far out of balance that you have to walk in circles, now you've got a problem that only you can deal with in different ways. And watch as now the new opportunities which are happening on Earth right now are showing up every day. Yeah, we know. A lot of you think that you're completely out of control on Earth. You can't turn on the news anymore. You can't stand to watch any of it. Well, that's not really a bad idea. Because you know your news are driven by the ratings. What would happen if nobody watched? What would happen if somebody came on to say something really important? Here's my next move, and nobody watched and everybody turned it off. Well, that's kind of what's taking place. Only humans haven't learned to vote with their remotes yet, but they will. But over time, what's taken place is there's a building of this energy, this forceful energy which is coming in. Now, please understand, dear ones, it's not a fight. It's not a versus. It's not one against the other. It's a balance, and both of them have to live side by side to bring the essence of all of humanity to the highest levels that you can now reach. And Merlia is good at that. She's really good at the balance, and she's not just feminine. That's important to keep in mind. Oh yes, Merlia and I have been around the block a few times ourselves, but we tell you she actually dipped her fingers into the earth at one point, and you called it Merlin. You placed it into a story that was unfolding all about empowerment. At very magical times. Well, such is the times of Earth now, because you're in this compression, which is getting very interesting for all of you, because the compression is getting really tight. Now, it's hard to move when you're that compressed. It's hard to feel free. It's hard to feel like you've got free will, but you do. In truth, many of you came into work in this compressed energy. We know it's not pretty for some of you. We know some of you are having great difficulties just staying balanced in your own energy, not knowing what to take as your own, not knowing what to be responsible for. But we tell you, wait and watch. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to stand in your own truth, for you to stand in your power, the true power, not the force. You don't need to push anything. It happens in harmony. That's how it works the best. And that's how you're learning to do this right now. Now, you might be learning to do it by going a little bit in the opposite direction. That's typical of how humans learn on Earth. So don't judge it. Don't call it right or wrong. Don't call it good or bad. Just know that that's the way it is right at the moment. Now, what peace do you have for that? How can you lend your little bit, whether it's in harmony with what's being processed or whether it's in opposition? How can you stand in your truth and still allow others to stand in theirs? Well, that's what's taking place. And you're going to find that the collective vibration of humanity actually rules everything. Now, we know you've got places of power, you've got governments, you've got all kinds of little things that you've set aside to play your game of pretending to be human on planet Earth. But we also tell you, dear ones, none of it's real. Not in the ways that you think. What is real is the love. Even the opposite of love, which is what we call fear, is an illusion created by the shadows of a duality planet of Earth. Now all the shadows are going away because you've stepped out of duality. A lot of people haven't caught up yet. They're still playing the duality game, the right, the wrong, the up, the down, the black, the white. All the differences of all of it. There are no black and white. It's all shades of gray, dear ones, every single piece. Pick that up, make the highest out of it, and carry your truth forward. Now, a lot of you have singular purposes. Some of you have had past lifetimes that have propelled you into this lifetime with a very important purpose, something to accomplish. And all of you have different contracts and agreements and things that you've agreed to bring in from home, to bring in by yourself, to bring into the planet and play the game, to try and improve it. Well, that's what's taken place. You're starting to see that the game, as it's currently laid out, does not work. It's time for a new game. Are you ready? You created this one. You can do it again. In ways that you can't even imagine right now. No, your planet's not going to end. Sure, it'll end in its own time, but that's quite a ways away. You are going through a lot of changes on the planet. The planet also is evolving as well. And yes, she's going through a major magnetic change. It will shift your planet drastically. But yet, if you go through this change and you're balanced, you'll go right through it. It's the out of balance that has trouble. We'll take you back to going through the dimensions, all the different dimensions. You want to go visit each one of these. Your spirit knows how to make the highest potential out of an incarnation. Not just one experience, but 12 different ones at the same time. And in truth, it's 144, but we'll get back to that another time. The most important piece of it is to know that you can move between dimensions if your sexual energy is balanced. There's a motivation for a lot of humans on Earth. Once they find out, there's going to be a big rush to balance your energies. Oh, then Merlia would be called upon again. She's here with a bunch of information about how to ground yourself, how to walk through this process, and how to bring out the power of the true balance. And that's probably the most important point. You know, dear ones, she's even a little bit resistant to coming in. Why? Because you tagged her with a feminine energy. Why would that be difficult for her? Because she doesn't like the separation. It's very simple. When you called her feminine, it means she's not carrying masculine. It's not true. She carries a tremendous amount of masculine energy. But she knows how to balance it. And she knows how to bring a certain part forward in a certain time to use it at its highest potentials. That's a feminine energy. That's the true birthing energy of planet Earth and the base creative energy held within that beauty. Find that within each of you. Dare to stir that one piece, to look at it, to try and balance. And also look where you're out of balance in other ways, because people can be out of balance with the feminine energy just as easily as you can be out of balance with the masculine. So look for it. Play with it. Ask for help. Ask for the assistance of the balance, and you'll get it. You're never alone, dear ones. And we wish you'd stop trying so hard. Some of you seem to shush. I just want to be alone. Don't touch me. And we leave you alone. But we also love you. We know you're playing a very difficult game to understand. We know it seems to take turns completely in the opposite direction that you want to walk. We know that sometimes you can't feel the wind at your back. And we know that sometimes you can't hear us. But don't ever forget that we're here. We'll never leave you, ever. You're part of a large family of light. And we celebrate that family every single moment. You are part of us. And that will never be lost, and truly never be out of balance. It is with the greatest of honor that I come in like this and get to talk to you once in a while. I really enjoy talking with you. And now that Merlia is here, she'll help to balance a lot of the energy for everyone and bring a new balance to Earth. Opening up the possibilities and helping to remind people who they truly are, instead of all the illusions that you've learned to trust. Watch ahead, dear ones. Don't get confused by all the chaos in front of you. There's a lot of it. But watch for the light. Watch for your light. Balance it as you can, and watch for the opportunities to move even interdimensionally, because it's a new game, and you're just learning how to play it now. And with the greatest of honor, I ask you to treat each other with respect. Nurture one another at every opportunity and play well together. I'm Ilra of Rhythmic Service. Aspavo.